Get some people to join us. Happy Easter Sunday. Hi, Mitchell. How you doing? Hi, Chloe. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Easter Sunday. Is it Easter? I hadn't noticed. I haven't eaten any chocolate yet. No chocolate. I'm being really, really good. Haven't even touched it. Haven't got anywhere near it. No, I'm not going to do that till later, I think. You know, got to keep these things, you know, under sort of containment for a little while. Yeah. Hi everybody, welcome in. I'm not doing tea today. I'm doing water because I've been out laying the decking in the garden. I'm absolutely parched. So what I have here is my mug from the 40th Cambridge Beer Festival in 2013, which I went to. Happy Easter! Happy Easter! Hello everybody. Happy Easter from Winnipeg in Canada. Hello. Nice to see you. Is there something on my face? I don't know. Ah, Stephen's arrived today. Hello, Stephen. Nice to see you. Nice makeup. Thanks. I did it myself. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Right. Chocky face. Is there a chocky? Oh, I got chocolate on my face. Oh, no. Right. Well, because it's Easter Sunday, I thought we would carry on with a bit more of a talk from my reluctant quarantine buddy, the fabulous Becky Clark, Director of Churches and Cathedrals for the Church of England. Have I got that right? I have, and here she is. Hey!
Happy Easter, everybody.
This is Becky, because you can see she's also been at the chocolate. Yes, so we thought we would carry on today with a little bit of a chat about the churches of the City of London. It's thundering and raining in the north of London Shires. Is it? We had a little spritz of rain here, but it's all right now. It's all right. Almost got my decking down, so I need to kind of finish that off before the heavens open. So we thought we would carry on with last week's chat, because you all love Becky so much more than me. I'm a little bit cross about it. And we were going to talk about the City of London churches, right?
We are. Are you going to sort yourself out? You know,
all right.
What is going on?
Okay.
This is amazing. Happy Easter, everybody. It's very good to be talking with you today. It's a really funny feeling not to be in church today, and Alex will tell you I've already listened to 2 online services.
Very loudly.
Yeah, well, as is right. All the Easter hymns are brilliant. So we had a lot of digital work. So I do want to give another shout out to the Church of England's digital team.
Woo woo! Yeah, digital team.
You know, among other things, it made it possible for me, while still in bed, to watch the Archbishop of Canterbury preaching an Easter service from his kitchen. So
she did text me this morning and said I'm in bed with the Archbishop of Canterbury. And I was slightly worried. I'm not going to lie.
She brought me up a toasted hot cross bun and a cup of tea to check, so it was totally worth it.
I did.
Absolutely.
Actually, we should tell them that, I don't know if you told them last week, your great Archbishop of Canterbury encounter once.
But I obviously don't work very closely with the Archbishop, but I do meet him from time to time. But possibly the greatest story ever is when we were on the same train back to London and we shared a Twix. He gave me half his Twix, because that's the sort of Archbishop that he is. He doesn't let anybody go hungry when there's Twixes to be had.
Archbishop!
I know. Name dropping.
Right.
All right.
So, we're going to go back to where we were the other day. Where were we the other day?
We were at Conquest.
At the Conquest. Norman, who came over. Not Norman. What was his name? William came over, and he conquered England, and we started talking about the foundation of Westminster Abbey. But we're going to rewind a little bit to then go back into that bit. So
yeah. So,
take it away.
The Normans arrived 1066. They were big builders, and they brought with them their own style of architecture. In 1067, it's pretty hot off the mark, they issued a charter for London to assure that all of the rights and responsibilities of the Saxon city would be upheld. But they weren't fools either. Among other things, they wanted to make sure that this newly conquered country would stay under their control. So they built quite a lot of fortifications, huge amounts of Norman castles all over the country, but in London they built something which is instantly recognisable, particularly if you were watching last week.
Ta-da! Is that the picture you wanted?
This is the White Tower.
Yeah, okay.
The White Tower of the City of London. Now, I don't know if my sister-in-law Ashley is watching, but when she first came to London, she was incredibly disappointed by this. She said it doesn't look anything like a tower, and to be fair, if you come from New York, New Jersey, It probably
No,
doesn't.
it doesn't at all. And we, as a guide, we have loads. I'm actually just going to push this back a bit so we get a bit more of a fabulous Becky. As guides, we often take people to the Tower of London, and they go, "Oh, it's not really a tower," and you're like, "No, it's not at all. It's a fortress." But this was at one point in time the tallest secular building in Europe, wasn't it?
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Hashtag guide facts.
There you go. Because obviously all the tallest buildings are always churches and cathedrals. So it was it was Lincoln Cathedral from when it was finished around 1300, and it took over as the tallest building in the world from the Great Pyramid at Giza, which up until that point had been the tallest building for 2,500 years.
Well,
So
there we go.
Do an entire edition on building heights.
That'll be a fun one.
It will.
Yes.
It'll be amazing. So the White Tower, obviously nothing to do with churches, or is it? Because actually inside of the White Tower is one of only 2 remaining Norman churches, and this is a really fantastic picture. This is St. John's Chapel. Now, if you're looking at architecture and you see this kind of architecture, these big rounded arches, these columns which have got these very simple capitals on them, not a lot of decoration, but really solid stuff. These are Norman. They're also known as Romanesque because they're a bit Roman.
Yeah, good old Roman.
Romanish.
Yeah,
Romanish
architecture.
So these Romanesque arches you see in St. John's Chapel, which still holds services to this day periodically. The other surviving Norman church, but slightly later than this one was very, very early, it started around 1080, is St. Bartholomew the Great.
I love this church. I was, a couple of weeks ago, one of the last jobs I did, we went here and I posted a couple of pictures from it. Oh, it's so beautiful. And Becky basically told me I was a heathen when I said that we can't just talk about the churches for being churches. I have to talk about them in relation to film, because St. Bart's the Great has been used in so many films, and I'm going to bring up just a couple of them here. Top left, we have Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. On the film. Right, I know, it's really...
Kevin Costner and Alan Rickman think they're in different films.
Alan Rickman's the best thing ever. Oh yeah, Emma used to ring bells there. Yes, you did. You did. On the right is Four Weddings and a Funeral. That is where he finally marries Duckface. And I don't know if you can see just behind the chat, my future husband Chris Hemsworth is making another appearance in Avengers: Age of Ultron. And it's been in so much stuff. It's even been in The Muppets Most Wanted. I mean, it's been in tons and tons of movies.
It's used a lot for filming.
We watched Sherlock the other day, didn't we? With Robert Downey Jr. and it was in that. So it's in so many movies.
The bells you're here ringing in Four Weddings are not the bells of that church.
Oh, there we go.
Did not know that.
Fun fact, Emma. They're the Oh no, he doesn't marry Duckface, does he? He goes to marry Duckface, but doesn't. Emma, do you know what bells they were if they weren't the bells of that church? That's always the question you don't want to get asked. Oh, they're not that one. What are they then? I don't know. Anyway,
while we wait for the answer to that. So we've got this amazing church, St. Bartholomew's. The chancel of this, so the bit you can actually see in the original image, there's this one. Again, these rounded arches, these quite simple capitals. This is Norman. A lot of the rest of the building is much, much later, but this is a surviving Norman part of the church. This also has the slightly dubious honour of being one of the only Anglican parish churches that charges for entries. You have to pay to go in.
It's worth it though.
It is worth it. I don't hate that, because actually it does help to pay for the upkeep of the church. And of course, 8 of the cathedrals charge, Westminster Abbey charges, so there are various.
And to be honest, if you're kind of famous for doing movies, you might as well get a little bit of the extra, stuff that can come with that with people coming.
I think so. So I mean, it's a debate. It's a debate whether you should charge to go into places.
Emma's got no idea who the bells were for Four Weddings.
Brilliant.
Rubbish, Emma. Rubbish.
What's even the point of having you on?
Well, she also thinks 2 of the 5 St. Bart's bells predate the Great Fire.
There's quite a lot of very ancient bells in the City of London, because they tend to survive fires and things like that, because they are by their nature very robust. So yes, there is a bells register. So you can look up ancient bells. You can do.
I'll be right on that on Monday morning.
Absolutely. So let's move slightly forward. So this is the 12th century. So we've done the Normans in the 11th century. They went through to the 12th century. This very kind of distinctive building style. They built a lot. Like we talked about last week, a lot of it doesn't actually survive in the modern buildings.
Yes.
So in 1208, something interesting happens. This bloke, King John,
what a looker.
I know, of the curly hair, he manages to get himself excommunicated
Oh dear,
from the
that was
Catholic Church.
careless.
It was a bit careless. He refused to accept the Pope's choice of person for the Archbishop of Canterbury. The Pope responded by excommunicating not just King John, but the whole of England.
Hurrah!
The reason I bring this up is 1208 is the last time all of our church buildings were shut. It was the last time. So we're a bit out of practice in doing this. So
you have to find where the keys are.
The fact that they're all shut for Easter this year is a very strange and very unusual thing, and we can't even blame King John this time. And they're closed for for the right reasons, but it is very peculiar.
I agree, Rachel. Ding dong, right? What a looker! What a looker!
It's just the crown, isn't it?
It's the crown. Yeah.
You're always attracted to good.
Yeah,
jewellery.
I like long hair and good bling. Yeah,
absolutely. So obviously King John, he was excommunicated for refusing to accept the Pope's choice, but he had other problems in that he was not very popular among the barons and the other aristocrats of the land. So in 1215 he was forced to sign the Magna Carta.
Dum dum dum.
The Great Charter. There are.
My friend Simon has a joke. He says 12:15 just before lunch. As a result, I've always remembered the date.
Is it a great joke? Is it though? I mean,
I think it's
tell us on Twitter.
I think so.
There are 3 clauses of the Magna Carta that still survive in English law to this day, or in UK law to this day. And one of them guarantees the rights of the English Church. Absolutely.
Lucky you.
I know, lucky us. One of them guarantees the right to a trial by jury.
Ah, lucky us.
Which means that the guy who tried to steal Salisbury Cathedral's Magna Carta last year was guaranteed a fair trial by the Magna Carta.
Hooray!
Hooray! He was still found guilty. And number 3 is guaranteeing the rights of the City of London. So this goes back that far. The Magna Carta was enormously important because the City of London was important by that point. 1216 was the last time that London was occupied by continental armed forces in the First Barons' War.
Foreigners.
And Louis VIII of France marched through the city and up to Old St. Paul's, which we're going to talk about later, to be celebrated as ruler there. So there's a very interesting. Obviously, the city's been occupied by various English forces since then. We've invaded ourselves multiple times, sometimes successfully. But it's the last time we had continental forces in the city. So the key thing that happened around this time, this sort of 13th to 14th century period, is that Westminster started to develop. Now, in this map, you can see behind the chat where Westminster sits round the bend of the river from the City of London. And what's interesting is it's actually, then it felt like very much a separate place, a separate village or town to the city, which was already quite a big centre of population. Westminster became a centre there because the Royal Treasury...
A sentient city.
A sentient city. It became a city because the Royal Treasury moved there. Prior to that, London hadn't necessarily always had a capital, or if it had it kind of moved around. So, famously, it was in Winchester, quite a long time. Love Winchester, another amazing cathedral. But it was in various places. You'll see various places, particularly around the southwest, that say, ancient capital of England, and they probably were for about 6 minutes. So it's a great one to sort of go and visit them all. But this was the time in the 13th century where it really settled down in Westminster. And this was because the royal capital developed around Westminster, whereas London really was starting to define itself in the city as a city of trade and of commerce. Now,
listen up.
We're going to talk a bit about Old St. Paul's. Now, we talked about Old St. Paul's, which may or may not have looked like the Basilica Church last time, which is very, very old. This Old St. Paul's was built between 1087 and 1314.
And did look like this. We know this.
And we know it did look like this.
Yeah.
So it was finished in the early 14th century. It's probably the 4th church on this site. It was one of the longest churches in the world on its completion. In fact, it was longer than the current St. Paul's.
Yeah, and one of the fun facts that we always get told as guides, which I love telling people, is that it was so big and so wide that actually people would, from the City of London, would cross through the church rather than going around. So they would take their horses, their pigs, their whatever, and they'd basically march straight to the middle of the church because it was much quicker.
So this is it. I love. The church was a hugely kind of multi-purpose space, partly because it was so enormous. And you still get this a bit in some cathedrals these days. They're so big, you have some multiple things going on at once. But on completion in the mid-1300s, this Old St. Paul's had the shrine of Erkenwald, another reappearance of Erkenwald.
Yeah, no, I don't know if Russell's watching, but Russell loves a bit of Erkenwald.
We heard last week about Erkenwald. He was one of the first bishops of London.
Yeah.
So he had his shrine. Now he'd been made a saint. But it was also used for a lot of secular purposes. People traiting their horses through rather than go around this huge building.
Dentists plying their trade in some of the little side chapels and stuff.
In the nave aisle, there was something called Paul's Walk, which was an area where people would basically walk up and down and gossip. And it was amazing because it had become this place to meet, and the people who met there were called newsmongers.
I like that. No, I thought we had a picture of Paul's Walk, but I think it's another download fail.
If you engage, if you look up Paul's Walk, you'll get a wonderful engraving of it, all these people, and it's described as being quite like Babel. which, you know,
I love it.
a recommendation, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely, would go. So
10 out of 10 would
go,
recommend.
and it was called He was called Walking Paul, to go and find out all the gossip and news of the day.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, no, so you can let's bring that back.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the church started to be a bit neglected, particularly as time went on, and the spire collapsed in 1561.
Whoops.
Yeah, it actually caught fire, probably from a thunderbolt, and fell through the roof. A bit Notre
I mean,
Dame-ish.
you know, there's a thing about, I don't know, sort of God smiting somebody down, and he clearly didn't like the spire, because he just was like, no.
So one of the most famous stories has sort of become slightly mythical is of York Minster, which had a major roof fire in the 1980s, because it was also presumably hit by lightning. It's the only thing we can think.
He doesn't like spires.
No,
Can we take it?
This wasn't the spires. This was the day after the vote went through to allow women to become priests.
Ooh.
Make of that what
Scandal.
you will. It's almost like God doesn't work through lightning bolts.
I know, right?
Yeah, who knew?
Who knew?
Yeah. So the spire here collapsed in 1561, and they did start to restore it. It was slightly lacklustre, although Inigo Jones was involved, who was a name in architecture. But they were still working on this. They didn't really start proper restoration until 1621, and they were halted by the Great Fire.
Ruh-roh.
When, of course, the whole thing was destroyed.
So we did a big talk on the Great Fire of London, kind of almost at the start of this, almost 3 weeks ago now, with the fabulous Laura Adams over 2 days. It's a great chat. If you want to know any more about the Fire of London, go and have a look at that. But yeah, St Paul's, the old St Paul's, which is this one, got burned down. It wasn't expected. It was expected to kind of stand because it was stone, but the roof was wood. There was wooden scaffolding around it, and everyone working in the area were in sort of bookbinding and printing, and they all shoved everything in the cellar of the crypt of the cathedral, going, it's fine, it'll be okay in there. And it was just essentially tinder for the fire, which was crazy. So the whole thing got destroyed.
Yeah, and when we're talking about things like Notre Dame, and I spoke a lot about the Notre Dame fire at the time when it happened, and there was people like Emmanuel Macron saying it's going to be rebuilt within 5 years. Absolute nonsense. I mean, it took them 45 years to really start on restoration of this, and then it burned down again. But actually, any good restoration takes a lot of time, because you're trying to deal with something which is really unpredictable, and even stone buildings do react to fire. So you have
and it's funny because when Notre Dame happened, and I remember saying to you, look, you know, you often hear about things that are under refurb or whatever, and they catch fire. And you said something along the lines of, I don't know if you can remember what you said, or I'm going to get it wrong now, something along the lines of, yes, but you've got to remember when things under refurb or whatever, they're opening up sort of air pockets in places that haven't had the air in there for years, and so it kind of, you know, it opens up. What were you saying?
If only there was an easy way to find out. I mean, times of restoration, they're always the periods of greatest vulnerability for our buildings. I will tell Macron, Sarah, yes, because you are exposing parts of the building that have never been exposed or are not normally connected.
That's what I said.
Fire finds it easier to move. Scaffolding and things like that are enormous routes for fire to spread, which of course is what happened in Notre Dame. We do find that these are very risky periods, whether it's for a building as old as this or for a contemporary building.
I think I explained that perfectly.
I mean, it's your skills with communication that astound me, really. It's just wonderful. You should become a guide.
I really should. Oh, Rosie's got to go and put the roast in the oven. Enjoy, Rosie.
All right, so we've reached now the 14th century. So fascinating. In 1100, the population of the City of London, or London as it was then called, because it was considered the whole, was about 15,000 people. Big city for the 1100s, but you know, by 1300, 200 years later, it's around 80,000 people. I know, it was grown enormously. One of the big things that had happened was that people had started to organise, like organisation.
Goodness.
Absolutely. So the trades in particular, they organised into the guilds, and the guilds built some of London's finest churches.
We might do a one on the guilds. I think that might be quite fun to do.
I think it would be, because the guilds are really fascinating, and they're fascinating not only because of what they did do, but what they do now.
Yeah.
How they're still so involved in the governance of the City of London, which is in itself really weird.
And how they've had to change. So some guilds that are their industry isn't the same as it used to be back there. Have we got Easter bird effects, Ben? We have. Can you hear them? Yes. What was I saying? I don't know. Anyway.
You're saying the guilds have had to change.
Yes, they
focus
have.
on. Yeah.
We'll do another thing on that, because
so we've got a couple of guild.
We had a glass
here.
of wine at lunch. You can tell, I think. It's not going well.
We had a couple of guild churches that we can show you now. So there were lots of guild churches that were built. Most of them were built in the 12th, 13th century. So we've got, for example, St Lawrence Jewry, which we can bring out.
This one?
Yep.
That one.
No, that is St Martin within Ludgate, but we can talk about that one. We'll talk about that one.
She said yes.
That's St Martin within Ludgate, which is a wonderful church. So there were lots. There was St Margaret Pattens, there was All Hallows by the Wall, there were any number of guild churches. that existed. And the guilds were really into this sort of religion because when they were first forming, going to the same church and worshipping together and having their own rituals was a huge part of what made the guilds quite important and quite powerful. The guilds evolved into what's known today as the livery companies, which obviously still exist. There are in fact 101 of them now. I know. There are 39 that maintain historic halls, and there's a very strict order of precedence with the mercers at the top, places like Fishmongers Hall, which is fourth, and very generally the mercers are the merchants. You've got things like fishmongery, you've got things like chandlery, which were very old professions which tend to be further up this hierarchy. And
dyers, tanners, things like that, all the kind of
apothecaries,
all the sort of old things that not all of them exist anymore, but the liveries tend to, and they've sort of rejigged what they do, which is what I was trying to say earlier, but couldn't quite manage it.
In the Middle Ages, the guilds were really important. They endowed an awful lot of religious institutions, these sorts of churches as well, but chantry chapels in cathedrals and in other churches, other little chapels out and about in the town. They also include some more contemporary ones. So one I wanted to pull out was the Hackney Carriage Drivers Company. So I haven't seen if Gary
is here.
Gary's joined
Gary,
in.
make yourself known.
So you've got the Hackney Carriage
He
Drivers
hasn't commented
Company.
anything yet, which is very unusual for Gary.
And you've got ones that are still being created. So the most recent one was the Worshipful Company of Arts Scholars, which became a livery company in 2014. There you go.
And there's things like the Worshipful Company of IT technicians and like all sorts of kind of modern things that go alongside all these danners and tyres and danners and tyres. Oh my goodness, I really shouldn't have had that glass of wine. Dyers and tanners.
Dyers and tanners. None of them have yet built churches, these modern ones. I think they should get on that. So we reached this point where actually by the late 16th century, London was a major international banking and trade centre. I mean, it really was, and it really hasn't stopped being that until today. And this building is the Royal Exchange.
I got one right.
This was founded in 1565, Thomas Gresham, and it was as a centre of mercantile trade.
We talked about this a bit on the coffee one. So if you go all the way back to there you go, Worshipful Company of Hackney Drivers. Gary's there. Have you visited it, Gary? Is it nice? You hasn't got a hall, is it? You must be a member of that, I guess.
Yep, got to be a member of that. So we've got this wonderful Royal Exchange here. There are not so many churches being built in this period, actually. And the reason that there aren't so many is because if you remember from the first talk, there were 96 churches in the City of London, in the square mile, by the time of the Great Fire. So they were quite churched out. But the Royal Exchange, which is at Bank, yes, Katie, you can still go and see it today. It's not in use for its original purpose, but it is in the centre of Bank in the City of London.
Right in the middle of Bank Junction. Right next to the Bank of England, and it is now a high-end shopping area. So if you come to London and you've forgotten to buy your helicopter or your yacht and bring that with you, then don't worry, you can get another one there.
I always forget my helicopter.
It's my yacht that I always leave behind. It's really annoying.
Yeah, frustrating. So we don't have so many, certainly what would be called parish churches being built because they were a bit over-churched. We talked about that last time. However, there was a need for some new church building. Non-conformist churches were starting to increase in this period, and we have as our final picture today this wonderful picture of the Dutch church Austin Friars,
which is lovely. I've sung there. It's a really nice little church.
It is lovely, isn't it?
And it's hidden down a couple of little side streets. You have to kind of know where to find it.
Yeah, it's well worth going and having a look at because this is really interesting. And this is a classic example of how these things tend to work in London. So this was the site, because the name of it is Dutch Church Austin Friars. Austin Friars because in the 13th century, so almost back to the Normans again, it was an Augustinian priory. And that was what was on the site for a long time. That was demolished, dissolution of the monasteries, and then the Dutch Church of Austin Friars was built around 1550, and it was granted to be built for the protection of refugees. And on this site, the church was built. It was then rebuilt after it was quite badly damaged in the Blitz, and it's the world's oldest Dutch Reformed church building.
There you go. I did not know that.
So there you go.
Interesting.
It's a beautiful church.
There we go. Cynthia is one of my Dutch colleagues.
Excellent.
Hooray!
Absolutely. So you have a home in London. So we have this sort of period where you had a lot of church building, you had a lot of very formative churches and a huge amount of sites being used, and these guild churches and the power that they had around the city really marking their territory in architecture, which is something that big companies do nowadays, but not through churches, but through office blocks, things like the Bloomberg building and these incredible new sort of iconic, quote unquote, office blocks. But when we come to the City of London, by the time we get to the Great Fire, we have this incredible sort of collection of architecture, this real panoply, lots and lots of layers of history already there. And that's really only at the point where people start to think about the city churches. They often only think of Wren, but actually you've got this, you've got a good almost 1,000 years of stuff going on before that.
Panoply.
Panoply.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to leave it today, and we'll pick it up another Sunday, doing the next bit of the history of churches of the City of London. Thank you very much, Becky Clark.
You're very welcome.
Gary did pop up and he said, no, he's not a member of the Hackney Carriage company, but they have no permanent home, but they do a massive trip to Euro Disney every year for very sick children, which is true. Yes, they take them in their cabs over to Euro Disney. It's lovely, actually. We might have to get Gary back on again. I mean, not going to get rid of him, am I? Love you really, Gary. So yeah, that's where we're going to leave it for today. Tomorrow we're back with Monarch Mondays. We're going to do Stephen and Matilda. It's going to be just me tomorrow. And then next week I am putting together the finishing touches to a sort of arts week. So theatre and film and all that kind of thing. And we've got some exciting guests for you. One who still has not 100% yet said yes, but I'm going to guilt trip him into it anyway. It'll be fine. Have a wonderful Easter. Becky and I are now off to eat all the chocolate and drink all the champagne and finish putting the deck down as we can sit on it in the sunshine. Have a wonderful Easter. Stay safe. If you can say it, you can be it. Stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Yay!
Happy Easter!
Happy Easter! Bye!